Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next session. Is artificial intelligence the new Eldorado for the air transport sector? I'm hoping that we can discuss how this industry can best take advantage of this new chapter in the digital revolution. My name is Nicola Clark. Thank you all for being here. There is so much interest in AI and its potential to transform this industry. I think we all recognize that as an industry, aviation generates vast amount of data, be it on fleet and airport operations, passport control and security, crew scheduling, air traffic management, maintenance, logistics, and of course mountains and mountains of personal data about air passengers. And we recognize that harnessing this data to identify and predict patterns and trends is significant, and it also has potential to anticipate problems and propose solutions in real time, or at least in a fraction of the amount of time that it would take humans to do on the ground and in the air. It's exciting, it's also daunting, and it's still early days for this technology, and there is a lot to learn and to consider. I am no expert on AI, and I imagine many of you in this room are not either. But we are very fortunate to have assembled a panel of people who have already been doing a lot of thinking about AI and implementing it into their operations, and they're here to share their insights with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. I'll start to my immediate right, Eddie Wilson, who you probably know, CEO of Ryanair. Prior to taking over as the airline CEO in 2019, he served almost 20 years as Ryanair's Chief People Officer and as head of personnel. To his right, Massimo Marin is Global Head of Travel and Hospitality at Amazon Web Services. Massimo's based in Boston. He's got more than 20 years of experience in the airline and hospitality industry as a developer, an analyst, and product designer. His core expertise is in airline pricing, distribution, revenue management, and e-commerce. To Massimo's right, we have Kim McCauley, who's Chief Information and Data Officer for IATA. Kim joined IATA from the banking and financial services industry, where she was head of data and technology for Standard Bank Group of South Africa. Today, she's responsible for IATA's IT, security and data governance, architecture and strategy, and in this role, she's responsible for leveraging data and analytics across IATA to generate business benefits for the industry. And last, but certainly not least, we have Philippe Vallée, who is Executive Vice President of Digital Identity and Security at Thales. Philippe was previously CEO and Chief Operating Officer at Gemalto, which is the world's leading digital security company, which was acquired by Thales in 2020, I believe. So let's dive in. I'm really excited about this panel. I think we're all intrigued, maybe a little bit intimidated by AI. Massimo and I had an interesting conversation a while back, and Massimo, you described the air travel industry as data-rich but information-poor. And I wondered if you could talk about what you mean by that contradiction, and if you can tell us how AI and machine learning are helping us to resolve that.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for being here, listening to us, and thank you, Nicola, for having us on stage. The travel industry, airline, ground transportation, travel sellers, and travel services always had an access to a vast amount of data. If you think about it, when you are actually booking a ticket, you're putting your first name, last name, passport, credit card information, you put there your phone number, but then you have actually operation information. You have information from the plane, information for the air traffic controller, and so forth. Unfortunately, what is happening, what I'm hearing from a variety of my customers, being it a digital company like the Expedia we're booking, or large airline like Ryanair, United, Delta, Qantas, Singapore Airline, the fact is that the data is actually locked inside silos. So the customer data, for example, from commercial commercial, it's not really talking to marketing, it's not really talking to operation. The operation information, if you get delayed, if your bag get lost, it's really hard to actually get disseminated to the other side of the organization. So there are a couple of reasons that are behind this. There is a lot of legacy technology that is actually being used by these systems that works. They're great till they don't work anymore. So they are actually being there, and they were designed in the 60s and the 70s, and unfortunately, they have not been evolving as fast as the customer expectations are evolving these days. The second thing is that because there is a lot of sensitive information, the various organizations are very reluctant to share inside the organization. They're all there and says, look, I am part of the marketing organization. I certainly want to know more about the sales. I want to know more about the operation, but I'm not going to share my information. I certainly do not want to share my loyalty information with the rest of the organization. So there is a lot of protection and being afraid that this data is going to be misused. Fortunately, with the bringing up on new technology like cloud technology, and AWS is the largest cloud provider out there, now you have actually services that enable you to actually monitor who is accessing the data. You have these services off the shelf that you can use, and monitor who is using the data, how it's going to be used. You can actually selectively choose which piece of information to share across the organization and to get the most out of it. What are the benefits of doing this? Is the fact that modern technology like ML/AI can actually be adopted at scale inside the organization. Because what is the fuel of the ML/AI model is actually data. So it seems weird, but ML/AI has been around for quite some time and it's becoming pervasive. I don't speak French, so I apologize for my French audience here. But there was a real-time translation of the conversation that occurring on stage in French into English. That is using ML/AI. When you're using your Alexa at home, that is using ML/AI. When you are getting, for example, at Amazon, how we are providing you recommendation of products that you might be interested based on your search history, that is using ML/AI. So ML/AI is actually been there for quite some time. It's actually only today, with the advent of generative AI, the new ML/AI, that is actually attracting the attention of CEOs and saying, we need to invest more on that part. But it has always been there.
Eddie, that's your cue. Ryanair has a reputation for being at the cutting edge of experimentation, I think, when it comes to maximizing efficiency and minimizing costs. And so I wonder if you could talk us through some of the ways Ryanair has been integrating AI already into your operations, and talk a little bit about what the main benefits have been and why is it useful to you as an airline.
Yeah, you know, there's lots of derivatives of this, whether it's machine learning, whether it's AI, whether it's generative AI, or whether it's just super fast computing. I don't really care which end of it is, except that it is all on a journey to more powerful AI. But I think what we have done is that we took a decision 10 years ago to have a labs function embedded within the company, and that is really going to help us going forward. We've got close to 1,000 people integrated into the company who now actually come up with the ideas, don't actually just take direction from the business itself saying we want this particular system, and that has been hugely creative for us. You know, I even question the idea now as to whether we need business analysts to explain things to our labs team, because they actually should know what's going on in the business. So we look at it very simply as, you know, cost for us is about efficiency. And efficiency is what's coming with the speed of computing, which is why I'm excited about it. It's a key part of my role every single day, because we're going to double in size over the next 5 to 7 years, and we can't do it without super fast computing, because unless you fly or maintain an aircraft, I want to have as few people as possible that actually support that operation. So we've got lots of we've lots of data. I think we're in a good position. We've kept I'm not talking about personal data here. I'm just talking about data to do with how the aircraft performed over the last since 2000. We've kept all that data, whether that's performance on particularly things like taxiing, fuel, whether we've generated cubes of data, as we call it, whether it's commercial, whether it's operations data, and we've got dashboards and interrogation that sits on top of that. But like, for example, you see what happened Southwest like a year ago. We're able to run a system inside now that simulates on French air traffic control strikes, which thankfully happen about every Tuesday, which means that we can run that simulation, and it's recovering from those really, really poor days where we're actually planning where the crews are, because anyone who works in an airline knows that the next day it's about getting the crews, getting the aircraft back to where they should be to start the next day. And if you're in a meltdown situation, you just deal with things sequentially, and we're able to sort of simulate that in real time, automatically message the crews and try and so that's one area. Now that isn't artificial intelligence, that's just really, really fast computing. I think the main areas are going to come from customer service, where we are at an advanced stage of extracting cost out of that and giving a better service. I think training is going to be the big one as well, whereby it seems AI, because you can do things, you know, it's doing things for many, so everybody has their own shooter. Maybe they have their own shooter in their own language. Maybe they can listen to the training in their car. Maybe it's a higher quality of training. But we look at it simply as, how can we make more money and how can we save more money? So when we look at how we make money, we look at how we model our scheduled revenue, our ancillary revenue, and how can we save money. Increasingly, it's what we do with operations every day. So it's about execution. So operations is a big part of it. Training is a big part of it. Customer service in taking complexity out of the business. I'm less likely to look at things like blue skies thinking, I know about the airports of the future and how that's all going to happen, but like, we'll be working on the mundane execution every day. And I think it's important that two things: you've got the people to execute those, which is your IT people, or labs people as we call them, and you have the data organized in such a way so that you can exploit it. And I think we're in very good shape for that. And it gives me great pleasure that while this is a fantastic panel here today, that there are no other CEOs today, which actually gives us, it gives me more, I suppose, confidence that we're on the right path here to progressing. So I'm really, really excited about it, but not in that blue skies way.
Well, since you mentioned ancillaries, I don't know why that made me hungry. I wanted to talk about ham sandwiches.
You want to talk about ham? You want to talk about paninis?
I want to talk about ham sandwiches. Again, this is something Massimo talked to me about. I understand, and this is a fun fact, that Ryanair, which is a client of Amazon's, Ryanair is the largest seller of ham sandwiches in Europe. Fun fact. Massimo, can you talk us through, this is a specific solution that you developed for optimizing food distribution for Ryanair, and talk a little bit about, you know, quantifying that in terms of financial impact?
Sure. So we actually partnered with Ryanair, with John Hurley, the CTO, and their analytics team. And one of the challenges that they have is how much food would you load in the plane to make sure that you're satisfying the demand of the passengers that are out there and reducing the wastage. The challenge that Ryanair has, as Eddie can tell you, is they are a point-to-point airline. So you load the plane only once a day. And then you do not know at the beginning of the day how many people, hungry people, you're going to get at noontime or in the afternoon and so forth. So you have to be very careful of what you bring in. So we actually work with the data team there. We started creating simulation and developing ML/AI models that start predicting how much food to bring into the plane. Because, first of all, you do not want to dissatisfy your customer. Customer service is paramount. And the second thing is nobody likes wastage. So, and also because wastage costs money. So how many ham sandwiches or how much coffee or how much tea are we going to load it in? And as Eddie can tell you, this has been particularly successful because it reduces, at the end of the day, we started reducing the wastage by more than 50% and saving millions of euros in food in that case. And by the way, the food in the plane gets sold for a pretty penny. So that is also a revenue opportunity for Ryanair. These are the kind of things that AWS and the technology can do, having access to that data, bringing off-the-shelf services and train the model, making it accessible, making it usable, making it practical, focusing on the basics. I'm working with this airline, with Air New Zealand, being excellent at the basics. That is their mandate. Then everything else comes on top of it. And I'm very proud to actually have here Eddie and being one of our best customers out there.
Can I just add one thing to that? I mean, while, you know, Massimo was quite right in what was delivered, but again, you know, it's about execution, because anyone who works in the airline industry knows that it's all very well for us to have the model that predicts it, but if the people don't load the sandwiches on the right aircraft or don't get it through security as quickly, and they're the sort of challenges that we actually need to solve as well. So it's always about execution. We're quite right. We're really happy with that model, but now you work your way back into the real world, because our industry is all about logistics and things on the fly, so to speak. So,
absolutely. I wanted to turn to Kim now on the subject of use cases, because IATA last year hosted a very high-level brainstorming session where people from across the industry looked at how AI can be harnessed to help you all become more efficient and profitable in ways like Eddie just described. But Kim, those sessions came up with some other very interesting use cases, and I wonder if you could tell us about some of those more compelling and perhaps surprising applications for AI that came out of those discussions.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to add on to what Eddie said there, because I think he's actually basically made me feel a lot better about what we're doing in the AI ML space, because it is absolutely about use cases that make sense and doing it in an experimentation phase so that you've got the opportunity to have access to really good quality data and that you're able then to test, and maybe you decide down the line that this use case isn't going to go very far, so you can stop quickly and then move forward. So as part of the Innovation Day, which we had with around 70 airline members of ours, cargo and passenger side, the two main areas for innovation around AI and Gen AI specifically were around disruption management, which Eddie has actually discussed as well, because an airline doesn't operate in a vacuum. So they are so heavily reliant on all of these other factors that they cannot control. The customer doesn't understand that. I mean, when you're going onto an airplane and maybe the baggage handler hasn't loaded your baggage, or the security control person's in a bad mood so you don't end up getting to the gate in time, it has nothing to do with Ryanair and everything to do with all of the other ancillary focuses. So that disruption management was a big one for us. And then route optimization, which links into very much the crew and predictive maintenance part of it. So those ones are obviously big ones. They're more a lot of airlines are already doing this stuff, and Ryanair has just explained exactly, you know, Eddie's saying what he's doing on that space. But for us at IATA, we are looking at industry-specific use cases that would benefit the airlines as a whole, and things around turbulence has been one of them. You know, it's turbulence products and services around trying to predict turbulence, or at least doing something and giving that information to pilots real time is something that's obviously huge, particularly now in the situation that we're facing now across the world. But the part there is not to take away that, you know, it's not to come up with a safety, secure type of mechanism, because you can never predict weather. That's one thing that we should know. Ask any pilot. They'll say, you know, today it seems like this, and in 5 seconds it's something else. But it's to try and add additional value to the pilot to be able to say, okay, now there is turbulence coming, this is what's coming off the sensors, and then to be able to make a decision around that. So in a nutshell, innovation in IATA is massive, but we've had to control the temperament, because as soon as ChatGPT was launched, everybody started pasting and copying their data into ChatGPT. We had our security officers saying, what are you doing? Legal was saying, you're not allowed to do this. So we had to slowly roll back and say, okay, there's a lot of enthusiasts, but now how do we do it in a controlled manner to get the biggest bang for buck?
Philippe, I think a lot of us in this room, many of us have been encountering, some of our first encounters with AI and has been in the security space. Thales is already integrating this technology into a lot of solutions, especially biometry and authentication of identity documents. And I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of an overview of the solutions and the applications that you've introduced.
Yeah, since we are talking about pain points and use cases, I think we seen from our window, at least we see two key pain points that we are trying to solve. First being not the airport of the future, but the airport of today, which is concretely pushing the walls to cater with the entire to the number of people that are passing through the airport at this point, and therefore we are working on this front. At helping the security of the authorities, the people tracking security to improve the passenger experience, whether you are checked at the border by recognizing, analyzing the document to make sure that they are truly genuine, by verifying the identity, by helping the onboarding process with something which is using a responsible biometric, and I can discuss that at length, obviously. So therefore, improving the passenger experience from the boarding card emission all the way to the passenger seat. The second pain point that we are pushing and trying to resolve with our clients is the sustainability aspect. We see today a lot of airlines having to reduce their carbon footprint, and by being part of the airline industry, both on the air traffic control side and supplying flight management system onto the plane, we have the possibility, though, by connecting securely the two elements, so the ground and the plane, the possibility to offer, based on AI, to suggest, obviously, the possibility to reroute and to modify the flight plan, which is by improving the trajectory, we know that we can help airline to save something like 20 to 30% of their fuel consumption, which is a big item of expenses. So we are at Thales very, very conscious about security as well, because you mentioned it, two keywords: mountains of data. And we think that it's in particular when they are processed by different type of AI, that we make sure that we have always something which is explainable, we understand the model which is used, and we are helping the pilot, the operation center of the airline or the air traffic management, and we are not replacing people, which is very important in our view.
I think there's some other applications that are also sort of focused on the user experience, the passenger experience. Maybe this is, I don't know if this is yet in implementation or if this is something that you're testing, sort of the seamless experience, passengers who have already sort of, basically you have hold of data, say, of frequent flyers, of your premium customers, and they can almost seamlessly turn on the in-flight entertainment, for example, and it recognizes them, and it possibly recognizes their preferences, maybe connects to some of their favorite streaming services, or connects them to, you know, right where they left off their last show. I mean, this all sounds fascinating to me. I'm just wondering, is this already here, or is this on the horizon, or?
Well, I mean, what is important, talking about technology, you mentioned AI, and you mentioned different kind of technologies in AI. Yeah? We talk about symbolic AI, we talk about machine learning AI, and so forth. We are really distinguishing what we make the difference between B2B usage and B2C. Here you are more in the business to consumer approach, and the product you are referring to is a solution we call Flight Edge at Thales, which is something we on an awards last week in Berlin, and this is about installing into an airplane a mini cloud data center, actually. And the idea, and this is pretty new for the airline IT, by the way, but the idea is to have a full connectivity connection between the plane and what's happening on the ground. In particular, when you renew the entire movie catalog, which is today a very cumbersome process. It runs every month. It involves tons of data to do it. The idea is really to have this passenger experience to be available. For example, when you are about to board, when you are during the flight selecting your program, connecting with another flight with the same airline, you would restore your experience on the subsequent flight by being identified as a passenger, as a frequent flyer passenger, and so on. So this is bringing cloud technology, I should say, on board the plane. Yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating stuff. I want to turn a little bit also now to the fact, really the agility that AI introduces potentially into solutions. I'm thinking of sort of the most recent example of a crisis that affected the whole industry, and that was the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. Massimo, we were talking about an example that actually, together with Ryanair, that you were able to, the problem was that when we were all free to begin traveling again, and we were able to get vaccines, and we had to have a vaccine, proof of our vaccines that came in as many different formats and languages as there are countries on the planet. And this created a huge bottleneck at boarding, and everyone trying to verify, is this a real document? Where is the information that I need? And AWS and Ryanair worked together on a solution. I'm wondering if the two of you might tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. You want to start, Eddie?
Yeah, well, I think the reason that we worked on it was because we were probably the only airline that was still at work. Like everyone else had gone home, and we knew that there's a survival instinct, given that we are Europe's largest airline from one of the smallest countries in Europe. Nobody was going to come and bail us out, so we had to sort of work hard to get back to normal, and we probably had more influence at European level during that time because everyone was at home doing their garden or whatever, and we were able to sort of at least influence policy because, at that time they were talking about checking everyone's card when they arrived at an airport, which of course would have brought all sorts of problems in clogging up terminals and aircraft being diverted and all sorts of nonsense. So we got in early to say, look, just let's have one code. And the airlines will check it at the gate, and that worked quite effectively. But that's why, I tend to think of, I don't tend to get overexcited about the, personalization or any of that stuff, because somebody always gets in the middle. I mean, someone always gets in the middle to make money, and they're going to do it in AI. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what search technology is going to look like in 5 years' time, but it's going to be radically different. But this idea that I'm seamlessly going to have this and seamlessly going to have that, I mean, when Google came along, all they did was push ads on you that you don't want. I mean, marketeers would all be redundant if everybody just bought what they want or what they bought the last time. Everyone wants you to buy something new. Travel would be so dull if you went to the same place every year. You want to try something different. So maybe there's a way that AI can do that. But I'm wandering off point here. But, I just think that, look, if AI or machine learning in particular can take complex problems that can give you a better answer in our industry that is racked by uncertainty and interconnected, between ATC, airports, etc. Actually pairing people up with their bags and getting them on the right aircraft is where it's at, right? Okay, rather than having a seamless customer experience, because it's not a seamless customer experience when it goes wrong, right? And when it goes wrong, you just want to tell people how they're going to get home, and what their options are, or what their rights are, or whatever. So I think And when we're carrying close to 200 million passengers this year, it's the 1 or 2% that go wrong. When it goes right, it goes swimmingly well, because it's a regulated industry, and the professionals of the pilots, the cabin crew, and the engineers keep the place running. Once we have enough money to pay for the fuel and the air traffic controllers in the sky, it runs itself. So it's about when things go wrong. So I'm, in the pandemic, I think you always get this creativity that comes in a crisis, because where I really got excited about computing, was that we had a problem of refunds, and no airline was set up to communicate with 70 or 80 million people who were all looking for their money back. They were the bookings in the system. And we had to turn that on with our labs team. And then when we realized we could do that, then we thought, God, we can make customer service such more easier here. That actually is great for customers and saves us some money and makes it easier to do. And I think that gave us a real eye-opener during the pandemic of looking at what complexity would look like on an apocalyptic sort of situation, because that's really the power of AI, machine learning, and super fast computing. I got a bit off topic there. But.
Well, and actually Eddie is right. The bottleneck today that we have in the travel space is actually the lack of personnel. There is a lot of constraint on capacity. There is a lot of challenges with the manufacturers and people problems. The fact that we do not have enough contact center agents, we do not have enough gate agents, we do not have enough mechanics and so forth. So how we help our personnel to perform better, to actually do what they are best at and take away all the busy work that is there. For example, we have United Airlines. They designed this system that was the intelligent airport. Basically, they identified that they were spending a lot of time, the person at the gate, identifying where was the ground service equipment that would enable the plane to be docked to the gate to be serviced. So where is the tow truck? Where are the stairs? Where is the fueling? And so forth. So what they ended up doing is they start instrumenting all their ground service equipment with IoT devices. They basically instrumented 20,000 different pieces of equipment, and they streamed the data inside AWS and created a map, and in no time you can actually see when a plane is arriving, do I have all my equipment there? That saved 1.8 million hours of search time to the person. Now the person can become more efficient. But then, as a byproduct, you now started finding out equipment you didn't think you had. They save $120 million in equipment that was lost. Why? Because people were looking for this equipment, so they hide it. So nobody take it. So when they need it, they can go there and pick it up. So now they found equipment. But now you can actually start seeing how you use that equipment. Do you use all the tow truck in the right way? Are you keeping the right maintenance in place? Are you positioning it around the airport in the right place? And that improves your operation. So turn time, something that is key for Ryanair, it's 25 minutes, right? Your turn time. So getting that on time, getting people out and in on the plane at the right time is an efficiency factor that can make or break an airline. So now positioning the equipment, understanding you have the right equipment to keep that on time is key. Now, guess what? That application ended up in the hand of the CFO, and the CFO is doing station planning. So I said, no, I know what equipment I need and what I have, and now I can actually plan for the growth of my business in that specific airport. These are the things that having access to the data, having access to the model, making intelligent decisions is actually providing assistance to the people on the ground to perform better their work. And we have countless examples of this. Contact centers, summarization of the call, mechanics, summarization of the work being done, retrieval of documents that enable you to do the maintenance that needs to be done. These are all busy work that MLEI are great at. What is the MLEI not great at? Fixing a plane, or making a person feel good when they miss a flight, or when they lost a luggage. That is where the human touch is important.
I think is really interesting what I'm hearing sort of from all of you is that as Kim mentioned, when ChatGPT came online, people got super excited, and there was this almost blue sky sort of enthusiasm. Well, what can we throw AI at to make our business more profitable or more efficient? And what I'm finding is that some of the what I'm hearing from you is that some of these really interesting creative use cases are driven by a problem. You know, a headache that needs to be solved now. And so while we're hearing about a lot of very different creative use cases for AI, and a lot of them sound really exciting, maybe not all of them are going to turn out to be winners, right? And so I'm just wondering, though, what is the appropriate approach? Should the goal be you know, to pick one or two solid use cases and execute those really, really well? Or is it better to unleash a developer like Massimo on, you know, throwing spaghetti everywhere? He's telling me that the data's there, the programming, solving the problem, it all can be done. The capability is there, but you know, what is really going to stick and have a practical use case that turns into dollars? And so I'm interested, Kim, if IATA has a position on that.
So I'm going to speak on behalf of IATA. I don't know if they all agree with me, but for me, it's one or two. Start small, show that there's progress, and then you can obviously get through it. Because the key challenges, as Massimo was saying, is around the silo mentality of a lot of industries. It's not only airlines. I mean, I was in banking, they were also very siloed. Nobody wants to share the data. Then you've got the added issue with airlines where they give their data freely to everybody through legacy decisions that were made, and then when they want them back, they've got to pay for their data. So there's, you know, the access to the data, access to good quality data, and then obviously the skill set is very important. I think still aviation is really struggling to attract really strong IT professionals, data scientists, machine learning engineers, because it's not seen as the most, you know, I think it's sexy, but it's not seen as the most sexiest industry. So there's still this drive to try and get, you know, more people into aviation. And then there was a lot of outsourcing of key technical activities from aviation to third parties. Now airlines are starting to pull it back in. Data is one of the big ones. They realize that this is a massive asset for them, and they need to be able to manage it as such. Whereas any other organization, like banking as example, there's no way they would share their data for free. So there's some more of this bringing back of control. But I think just also linking to the points of, you know, you can put anything with everything. You can call anything AI. But it's understanding what's the best use cases, and the predictability part is really something that's very, very important. And we've seen a lot of advancement on that. I mean, just on the airplane sensors and triggering, you know, if something, you know, all of the predictive analytics and predictive maintenance is something that obviously airlines can manage. But when there's something that's maybe a fault that's coming through, having that go back to the engineers on the ground for them to be able to tell the next crew, you know what, don't come in yet because we're going to have to land and then we're going to have to fix something. That's where the benefit comes in around productivity. So for us, it's really one or two use cases, showing immediate benefit and then expanding it.
Okay, great. I wanted to sort of, we've been obviously been talking about a lot
sorry,
of...
Nicola,
yes.
if I just piggyback on what you just said, I would add something to your point is also create some form of awareness at management level. Because everybody talks about AI, but at the management level, you know, I did a staff meeting with my own excom a few weeks ago. The idea was to create some sense of awareness and curiosity and interest to what AI truly mean by exposing them to AI specialists that we have within Thales, or even people coming from the outside. Because today, at the management level, we have so many things to do, but we hear a lot of things about AI, but at the end, we are not so much exposed, and we don't have the willingness to launch this kind of impulse on trying and failing fast, by the way, like you said, but at least trying. And this level of awareness is also very important to raise with the right level of culture and understanding of the basic principle of AI.
So if I actually can piggyback on that, we have our own mechanism at Amazon how we innovate. We call it working backward. So we work backward from the problem and from the customers. So first things that we do is we identify what is the problem we are trying to solve. How do we know that it is a problem? How do we quantify that? How do we identify that that problem, that solution, we can actually measure the outcome? And what is the customer experience when that is solved? Those are the kind of questions that we ask. A lot of customers come to us and says, oh, can you tell us a bit the art of the possible? Tell us what are the use cases you would like to solve. I says, you don't need me to tell you what are the use cases. You have tons of use cases. If you work backward from that and you answer those 5 questions, you can actually really start diving deep on that specific challenge. Then, do you have the data to actually solve that problem? Because if you do not have it, then that use case can actually be parked right away. The second thing you have to look at is, yes, I have the data, I can execute. Well, when you create your model, GenAI, MLAI model, whatnot, can you use the output of that model and incorporate in your process and procedures? If you're not able to do that, you can actually not execute on the output of all the investment that you put in there. So those are the kind of things that start reducing the numbers of use cases that you can apply it. And now you start creating a muscle. You start creating a muscle that you can train, you can start looking for those use cases, answer those, and start applying at scale. The experimentation will accelerate, and you will, success brings success. You have not to think too big, you have to think practical, and that is what our customers do.
Just maybe to quickly add on both Thales and AWS, if the concern is that you are going to be sharing data and there's a fear of the sharing of the data, we've actually got a use case with Thales and AWS where we don't have to share data in order to train a model together. So we've actually created this trusted research environment where we're able to share our own data to train the model, but we don't ever expose it to another party.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd go back on the point again that if you don't have the data in a manageable format and you don't have the people to adapt it, then you are in a really, really bad place. And as an airline, well, certainly from our business, what has helped us over the years is that operations is commercial. So if you start with operations and you've got that data and you've got the people to implement it, they will layer systems on that. And that's what we found. So we started doing it from the operations side to recover from disaster days. But disaster days come in frequently. Then that system then talks to how do we optimize the swapping of aircraft. Then we got into the idea of how, like, we've got one big optimization problem in Ryanair. We were able to get the utilization of the aircraft up, which meant we were able to create free aircraft out of thin air, which is in the days, which is quite helpful with OEMs at the moment. But we were able to actually create extra free aircraft there. Then we were able to plug in a new employee app that we were able to get people that were particularly in winter time, to opt for time off, and we were able to create a marketplace in that gave them more time off, reduced absenteeism, and saved us money. So I just find this constant layering on, and then that's in the commercial area now where we're optimizing. We've got 96 bases with 280 airports. The amount of route networks that we can optimize over the next couple of years, and we've got swimming pools full of data to go back on that to redo our schedules and all that. So I can see nothing but problems to be optimized. Other ones are cultural. It's all very well to be talking about predictive maintenance, but if you talk to engineers with driving rain on the night, trying to get an aircraft out for the morning, it goes against them to actually replace components that aren't yet broken yet. So there are cultural problems with that, but certainly have the people, have the data, start at the operation, layer it on, and you will be amazed what you can do.
We only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that before we go, we get a chance to touch on some of the potential pitfalls of introducing AI into this industry. We've learned with every new digital technology that sometimes we move too fast and we break things. I wanted to get a sense of what each of you very quickly sort of sees as like the big challenges going forward. I think especially for some of the use cases that rely on collecting passenger data and sharing the data that has to be shared across jurisdictions sometimes and between institutions. Philippe, could you talk a little bit about what Thales is doing to help build trust and remove doubt that many people have about sharing things like biometric data?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, this is a lot about data, data that are processed by Terra on sites like Amazon Web Services. So cybersecurity is super important. I mean, no, needless to say. So first of all, check the identity of the person who have access to such data. Make sure that they are allowed to access those data. And second, encrypt them. We can help our customers to bring their own encryption on Amazon Web Services. We do that today. So in particular with machine learning capabilities, I mean, this is even further quantities of data. So please protect, protect, protect.
Kim, I know that IATA has been very involved in talking to governments and regulators about the implications, especially when it comes to data privacy. What are some of the challenges that you see going forward?
Yeah, so for us, obviously there's the EU AI regulations, which has been launched. We don't know which other areas are going to be launching similar regulations, so it's trying to stay on top of that. And then because IATA's members are dispersed across the world, things like the data regulation in China, where data has to remain in China, so those localization ones, and there could be others on the horizon. So knowing all of those and not failing to meet the compliance of those regulations is often a challenge because they change so frequently. Completely agree on the cybersecurity side, and then I think just the upskilling of our staff to always be, adhering to some of these regulations, understanding what you can use data for, and being transparent in what that data has been used for.
Just kind of want to circle back to something that Massimo mentioned earlier about all the legacy technology that's out of there. When we read about breaches and hacks of airline databases and whatnot, I think that's what it gives people pause. And I wondered if you could talk just a bit to what extent the fact that bad actors do sometimes exploit these weaknesses, how much of a break does that pose to the advancement of these new data-driven technologies?
So, yes, bad actors have access to this technology, but I give you a news flash. We do as well. As they have access to that, we have access to that. So the limiting factor of innovation today is inertia. Expecting that what we were doing yesterday on the data privacy, on the data protection, on the operation, on the customer engagement works today is no longer acceptable. So, and there is no better time than today of having access to these services off the shelf very cheaply. You can scale it up and down the way that you want and being global in seconds and enable you to experiment and start securing your data out there. And as Philippe said, encrypt everything. Everything at rest, everything in transit. Now you are sure that is not accessible for anybody. But then put in place a good governance model and then start using meaningfully the data that you have also for your organization. I was talking again, not because I particularly like United, like Ryanair. They are one of our most advanced customers out there. It says how you start using this data. You need to bring into the room not only technologists and business leaders. You have to bring in psychologists, legal organizations, so forth. Is it what this model are generating, creating liability for us, or is it scaring our customers? So doing very simple things like messaging, communicating to the customers in real time about delays, cancellation, or change of seat. Am I helping the customer or am I not? These are the kind of things that we focus day in and day out. But there is a need of change of the organization, change of the mentality, and experimentation.
Great. Well, I think we are reaching the end of this conversation. This has been really interesting. I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for all of you being here listening to us. I hope it's been helpful.